Good evening. I'm Steve. This is my rock and metal life, and tonight I'm here to talk about a show that I went to a week ago tonight. It was last Friday night. Just about this time, I was getting out of the Warner's Theater in downtown Fresno, and we went to a show that's a little bit outside of what I've been up to. I don't know, the last 5, 10 years maybe. I've been going pretty hard down the road of the heavy stuff and uh, digging a lot of thrash, and I've really just absolutely fallen in love with Megadeth like I never did uh, in any of the years prior. However, I took a little trip back through some Southern rock on last Friday night, and we had a show here in town. 38 Special, the Marshall Tucker Band, and Molly Hatchet. They came to town, and right away you've got to consider the fact that out of those three bands, there's only two original members total. Uh, None of the Molly Hatchet guys are originals, but they have a couple guys that go back to the 80s. And then Marshall Tucker has an original, and 38 Special, they've got Don Barnes still. And if I'm wrong on that, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure that's what I turned up when I looked at it. All the Molly Hatchet guys from the glory days, meaning uh, the first album through early 80s, they've all passed. And this is one when it was advertised on the radio. It just hit me right. I heard it on the radio, and it was a few months back, and I thought, man, you know, I should probably go see that show. Um, Except for Marshall Tucker, the other two bands I'm pretty familiar with, and Marshall Tucker Band's has just been a blind spot for me. But I'm definitely going to talk about him in a minute. Um, so it's one of those things where when I heard this show was coming here, I thought to myself, okay, I want to go. I kind of want to go. I kind of want to hear those songs. That's going to be great. And then I always think, okay, these guys all come to my town. If I don't go, whether it's money or whatever, the night of the week, whatever it may be, if I don't go, what else am I gonna do? So it's a Friday night. Am I gonna sit here and watch college football? I could. I very well could. But no, I feel like I ought to be there for this, and I was pretty sure I was gonna enjoy it, and I did. This was a fantastic show. I have just about nothing to display because like I say, I have not been into the Southern rock uh, for a good long while. I've been more into, as you probably know at this point, Van Halen's the center of my universe. Aerosmith, Triumph, Led Zeppelin, that stuff. The circle gets bigger. Motley Crue, uh, Doc and Rat, those guys, that's the bigger circle. When I was young, Southern rock was part and parcel of, just general rock and roll. If you turned on a rock radio station, you were absolutely going to hear Southern rock. And Leonard Skinner actually predates me. I didn't get involved until after the plane crash, and I had to go back. I got, the greatest hits compilation to come up to speed, and I bought Second Helping, and I think I have one other record, and I got the live record on, it's on vinyl out in the garage, I do believe. But Southern rock was really woven into uh, the metal of the 80s. Motley Crue and those guys that went down that direction, that was like a departure from what was like kind of common. Led Zeppelin, had stuff that had the bluesy country sound here and there. The Rolling Stones would often do, they were so heavily blues influenced, they would do songs that you would just say those are flat out country songs. um, and the Eagles, before Don Felder, without Joe Walsh, the Eagles were, country rock, not too far from their friend Linda Ronstadt, the way she started out. So it was there, it was always there. And even bands that you wouldn't really say they're country, or not country, but Southern rock, like Bob Seger, somebody like that, George Thorogood, those guys were cool. They were, part of the family, part of the gang. And I did grow up liking a whole bunch of that stuff. John Mellencamp, when he went down his road, away from the pop and more into, trying to save the American farmer and all that. Charlie Daniels, I had 45s of Charlie Daniels when I was young. Yeah, it's definitely there, definitely part of my history, and I've definitely gotten away from it. And all I really have in my collection, I've got greatest hits here from Molly Hatchet and 38 Special, and they're fantastic, start to finish. These are, I I would say, if you're around in my day, 75% of these songs. And 38 Special, talking about how um, Southern rock was like mainstream and part of the whole genre as a bigger bigger view of it. 38 Special came in there, and they had the Southern sound, but boy, they did really good on the charts. They did a whole bunch of movie soundtracks. They got to where they were kind of like a safe space for everybody. It was almost like you know I don't know, I probably shouldn't say this, but like Journey or somebody like that. That everybody you knew liked them, even if you were you weren't really a Southern rock guy or whatever. 38 Special was very, very popular. I saw them one time before, and it was just about 40 years earlier. I saw them in Orlando, Florida, and I don't remember if I've told this story here or not, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again because I'm at the age where I don't remember. Did I tell you? So, anyway, um, I flew into Orlando. The military sent me to Orlando, Florida in 1983, and I flew in there the day after Christmas, and I took a taxi to the base. And on the way to the base, the guy driving the taxi had the rock station on, and they played a commercial and said, this is December 26th, I'm in this taxi. And he says, on December 28th, 38 Specials playing in town right there in Orlando, and they're with Joan Jett. And I was a huge Joan Jett fan at the time. I had just seen her the summer before, and for the first time in my life, I went to a concert by myself because I showed up in Florida, and the way it worked, the people I knew from previous commands, they filtered in whenever they filtered in, and so I was kind of on my own. But I bought a ticket, like my first day there. I went and bought a ticket, and then whatever it was, 2 days later. So I guess that would be the next day I bought a ticket, and then the following night was the show, and I took a taxi there and took another one home back to the base. And I saw them down there, and I'll tell you what, they were on tour de force, I believe, in 83, and this was in Florida, and I mean they had the run of the place. They had the crowd in the palm of their hand. That was a fantastic show down there, and it was a big show. It was a big, big stage set and everything, and they were really good. And then the crowd was kind of rough on Joan Jett, which disappointed me a little bit. She played essentially the same show she played out here in the summer, and just blew the roof off the place. And down there they kind of weren't having it. And she said something at one point, like she tried to get the call and response, nobody did anything, and she said something to the effect of "What's wrong with you guys?" and got more booze. But anyway, that was in 83. So all this time goes by, and here we are. As I said, all the Molly Hatchet guys have passed. 38 Special, I think all we got's Don Barnes, I do believe, is the only original. So, they got the catalog, they got the songs, so that's going to work. I'm sure the audience is going to be into it, and I was right. So I'm going to start with Molly Hatchet. And just blew my doors off. Just absolutely blew my doors off. And in playing this greatest hits, really brought back the good memories. I mean, the stuff I liked about them, they were always the little heavier Southern rock band, and they had the 3 guitars, the Guitar Army, all that stuff. And man, they played... they kind of played this set right here. They played Whiskey Man, Bounty Hunter, and Gator Country right out of the gate. Those were the first 3 songs. And in playing this greatest hits leading up to the show, I was like, boy, those are good songs. Haven't heard them in forever, so they really went down good. And, the band, they're a 4-piece now. The singer, they just changed singers again this year. They had a guy that kind of had more of the look. He had the hat and he looked, long hair, you know, kind of Ronnie Van Zant look, that kind of thing. And he's out, and I don't know why. And they've got this guy who he looks like he's a younger guy, and he kind of looks like he doesn't really look like he's in a Southern rock band. His name is, gosh, am I going to mess this up? I think I am. His name is Parker Lee, and I don't know how old he is, but he definitely looks young, and he wears jeans and a shirt. I think the jeans are kind of ripped. I've seen videos, and then I saw him here at the show, and the voice. I'm a big fan of Danny Joe Brown. I just love Danny Joe, and of course he's passed a long time ago, like I don't know, 2015 or something like that. But Molly Hatchet's been out there on the road, and this guy's holding down that seat, and he's good. He's a good entertainer, and his voice is just fine. I look at videos on YouTube and I see people say, "Oh, this guy, his voice just isn't right, and he doesn't look right," and those are, I mean, that's not like the bulk of it. I'm just saying I see that. A lot of people really like him, and he is great. I don't think his voice is out of place at all. I think people are kind of looking and not expecting that look from Molly Hatchet. But I would say this, I went back and I implore anybody to go on YouTube, and there's a video, a 35-minute video from Passaic, New Jersey in 1978, and it's Molly Hatchet, the year of the first album, and they don't necessarily so much look like Skynyrd, and Danny Joe's wearing a shirt that says redneck something, just a big t-shirt that says I can't remember, the plain as day is the word redneck, and I can't remember. Oh, redneck power, that's what it is. So that and that video, they are just going to town. The guitars are crazy, the upbeat songs, I mean, everything, they're just nailing it. I mean, they are just a smooth running machine. Danny Joe's doing the horse whistle all the time, and listen, if you don't get that, if that's not cool with you, I totally get it, and that's completely fine. I no big deal. That's why I said at the beginning, this is a little bit out of my zone here, but it was a great time. It was a great show. These guys, they carried on the torch like you would hope. They played the big songs. Dreams I'll Never See, they played. That was fantastic. Beating the Odds. I always dug that because Danny Joe left, I think, in 1980. They did 2 records. They did the first one in Flirting with Disaster. Danny Joe left. They brought in a guy named Jimmy Farrar. He, unfortunately, has also passed. And when Jimmy Farrar was in the band, they did the Beating the Odds record, and they did one more. Take No Prisoners, I believe. I think that was him. And they were kind of like, it was very noticeable that they kind of left they went very heavy, is what I'm trying to say. You hear, like in Gator Country and the early stuff, outside of Flirting with Disaster, they do have a whole lot of songs where they kind of do the Allman Brothers, da 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 da, and it's very Southern rock sounding. On Beating the Odds, they came right at you, man. And when they played that song, that was just like a pile driver. That was just fantastic. And then, of course, they finished with Flirting with Disaster, and everybody was on their feet. And then, I'll tell you, if their merch booth wasn't cash only, I would have bought a shirt. And, I never have any cash on me anymore. So I'm going to move on to Marshall Tucker Band. And I'll tell you what, I knew it was a blind spot, and I did not get ready for this. I did not watch or listen to anything. And this band, I mean, you got 3 guitar players up there. You got a flute player, and then you got the singer's 75 years old. And I know that because he said it. He asked the audience to sing along on Can't You See? And he said, if you can't do it, I don't want to hear it because I'm 75 and I'm up here doing it. Really cool. Really, really cool. Started their set with an 8-minute song, and I don't know what it was, but it was 8 minutes long. And I leaned over to my son and I said, "Yeah, I guess you just, kick off the set with an 8-minute jam, huh?" And then, obviously their heyday was the 70s. And that's what they came out with. And he said at one point he said in the middle of the set they played something that just kind of like went on forever because Molly Hatchet played 35 minutes, Marshall Tucker played an hour, and he mentioned after one of their long songs, he said, "Well, I'll tell you guys, that's something from the '70s, and you could do that stuff back then, you know." And me and my son just looked at each other like, "Exactly, that's what we're talking about." You know, I mean, they'd play a song, and all three guitar players would have a solo, and the whole thing would be swinging, and it was fantastic. It really was. I'm glad I saw it because now I know. Don't really regret not getting up to speed prior to the show because it was kind of the like a revelation to me. I knew the big songs. I knew Fire on the Mountain, Can't You See, Heard It in a Love Song. I knew those. And when they played those, the crowd was all in. And Can't You See went on for like, more than 10 minutes, and the audience sang along for over and over. Maybe a little longer than they probably should have, but he just kept telling them, okay, do it again. And everybody was all in. So it was fantastic. And I wish I could speak more intelligently about it and tell you what exactly I saw, but I can't. The flute guy, he sang. Multiple guys sang and sounded great. And it was a good show. It was a really, really good show. Good for them. Away they went, and 38 Special came out. And 38 Special has more of a, like an arena rock kind of setup. It looks and it feels like, if you go see Judas Priest or Van Halen or somebody like that, it's kind of got that setup. It's big. They got like risers on either side of the drums where what is it? They got keyboards on the one side and bass on the other. And then Don Barnes plays guitars and sings on the left side of the stage as you're facing it. And then the other guy, which I really ought to be looking up his name here. The other guy's an absolutely fantastic guitar player. He's on the other side. And again, they don't look like what I saw in '83. Nobody looks like, well, I shouldn't say that because 38 Special's webpage here. I don't know. I'm sticking to that. They don't really look like, they didn't have like the Skinner look to them. They were a little bit more, I don't know, not Southern rock, I guess. I'm struggling because I don't want to say anything that's could even possibly be construed as negative because it was great. The look was great. The point I'm making, it was the headliner came out and they were bigger than life, and it was it really wasn't anything that you could pigeonhole. They put on an arena rock show in a theater that was, I don't know, 1,500 people, something like that, and the audience loved it. They came out and they started with Rockin' Into the Night, and then they did Wild Eyed Southern Boys, and that's a very good 1-2 punch to start the whole thing with. And then they ran through a bunch of songs on here, and at one point Don Barnes mentioned that they got on, just about every movie soundtrack that came out over a stretch of time. And I remember Teachers. I remember that, and I remember thinking that song's kind of like too poppy mainstream, kind of away from the southern rock vibe, But it wasn't the only thing that they did like that. And they had, he mentioned Spring Break. He mentioned Joe Dirt. And I couldn't sit here and tell you. They did play some songs that I wasn't familiar with in the middle of the set. And then we had this weird situation where a guy in the front row passed out, and the ushers were coming down there, and someone would run, like sprint back to the back of the theater, and more people would come, and I thought paramedics would be coming at any point, and somebody down there got really upset and like was telling the band, waving them off, like, you got to stop the show. And then they just kept playing, and they could see what was going on over there, and they just kept playing. And then they shut the house lights off, which was kind of weird because it was like kind of forcing the band to stop playing, and yet now the people attending to this guy that passed out, nobody can see because it's in the dark. And then so the band stopped playing, they went off stage, then they turned up the house lights, which I think that's where they were going anyway. They shut off the lights on the stage, and then they were going to flip the house lights on so these guys could see. But for a brief moment, it was kind of weird. I was like, well, I don't know that helps. But clearly, the people helping the guy that passed out were trying to communicate, and they couldn't because it was so loud. And so anyway, there was a break, and then when they came back out, well, they carried the guy out. Like two guys had the hands and two guys had the legs, and they carried him out. It was not paramedics, and it was not a gurney. Just I'm going over all this because it was just weird. It was just kind of a weird thing. The show came to a stop. They carried this guy out. I don't know that he's okay. And then Don Barnes makes a joke about, boy, I was getting ready to pass out too, and I was like, do we know that guy's gonna live? I don't know. So the whole thing was like just a little awkward, but then they went right back into it. In the middle of the set, they played Roughhousing. That was a good one that went over well. And then, one of my favorite songs, I don't know if I should say this because it's going to kind of blow my whole image. They got a song, I think it's off of Tour de Force, and it's called If I'd Been the One. And I don't know, it's a sappy love song or whatever. But I always thought that was a good song, well written, great chorus. They played that. And they took this detour where Don Barnes said something about the other guitar player, and in the discourse about the movie soundtracks, there was something on the heavy metal soundtrack. And here I've had all week, and I haven't gone back and pieced this together. But the guy from the other guitar player, he played some, and apparently it's on the heavy metal soundtrack, which I don't have and I'm not familiar with. And but again, you're at a 38 special show, and then they played this like space age kind of thing where the guy's doing guitar magic, and then it was a really heavy thing that they played, and I don't remember the name of it, but just like Left Turn here, just kind of away from, that they're gonna do Caught Up in You and Hold On Loosely, and they've already done Wild Eyed Southern Boys, and in the middle here, and then they did this other song, it's an Easy Beat song, and I think it's called Good Time originally, and then In Excess and Jimmy Barnes, because those guys are from Australia, and they know each other. Jimmy Barnes is a guy that's, he's Elvis in Australia, but he never really did break out over here. They did a cover of it in the 80s when In Excess was huge, and then 38 Special did this song in their set, like right around the time they did the song from Heavy Metal, and it's a smoking rocker. I don't believe it's anything you could call Southern rock. It's a really up-tempo guitar tune, and it's great. It's fantastic, but again, a little weird, a little different, And I say that in a good way. 38 Special, man, they're they got a lot of tricks in their bag. So yeah, they did all that stuff, and then they finished up, of course, with Caught Up in You, and then Hold On Loosely was the last one. And I thought it was the other way around. I thought they were finishing with Caught Up in You, but doesn't matter. It was great. It worked out perfect. So that's it. That's the show. Great show. Got to reconnect with my the Southern rock that I grew up with and enjoyed. The audience really wasn't much different from the other shows that I go to. And it's similar if you go see Foreigner or somebody like that. So, hey, great show. Glad I did it. The tickets weren't bad. That was another factor. When I saw the tickets, it wasn't, because tickets are insane these days. And it wasn't bad. It was on the level of like Trans-Siberian Orchestra or somebody like that doesn't really stick it to the fans. Well worth the money. Glad I got to see all three of them. Once again, the subject that always comes up, should these guys be touring with no original members? I say yes. We need people to tour those songs. Those songs need to be out there, and as long as they're out there, I'm going. I was on the fence for a while. Wouldn't see tribute bands, didn't care for, one guy's not there, I'm not going to go see, whatever. No, I'm all in. Any night I can go out and enjoy these songs and have people around me that are into them, and I'm not the only guy that knows all the words, that kind of thing, I'm in. So, carry that torch. All three of these bands, keep going as long as you can. That's what I say. And if you get a chance to see the show, if you're into this stuff, I would highly recommend, if it's way outside of your wheelhouse, and if you're just metal thrashing mad, nothing but Megadeth and Anthrax and that stuff, I don't know, you might not like it. But it's a good live show, and I'll tell you what, it was a guitar extravaganza all the way through, from Molly Hatchet's guy to the three guys in the Marshall Tucker band to Don Barnes and the other guitar player with 38 Special. Guitars, guitars, guitars. Absolutely fantastic. So that's it. 38 Special, Molly Hatchet, Marshall Tucker band. Keep doing it.